Hi, my name's Tim Allers, and I'm a lead program manager on the Excel team. And today I'm going to present some of the cool new features we have in Excel 10. Now, we're excited about this release for a couple different reasons. One, we think we have a great balance between high-end and low-end features. And we also think we've done a great job in balancing the strategic direction with Office and then also all the customer requests we've been having for the last few years. So I'll also mention that several of the features I'm presenting today will be covered in other webcasts, including XML Smart Tags and the Office Web Components. So the first thing I'll talk about is our new work that we've done in the XML area. First of all, we're creating a new XML schema that we're calling XML Spreadsheet. And using XML Spreadsheet, Excel is able to richly represent all of the spreadsheet models that you would expect. So we have things like formulas, functions, formatting, and so on. And we actually support that throughout the entire product. So as you might imagine, we can use that to open and close files, open and save them. We also support it on the clipboard, so other applications can put this new XML schema up on the clipboard, and we can paste it into Excel and vice versa. We also support it in the object model. So in the old days, you were able to take a range of cells and ask for the value of that range and return an array. And now we're actually able to create an XML spreadsheet form that brings back all of the richness of the XML presentation of that range. And then we also support them in web queries. So that means you're able to make a web query to an XML data source instead of through HTML like it is today. Now, if you've worked with XML before, you'll know how easy it is to create these files on the fly. So this is really the first time that we've opened up the Excel file format and allowed customers to create these files on the fly programmatically that can be sent down to Excel and then opened up. And they'll have all the richness that you would expect with the formulas, functions, and formatting. You're also able to then, once the files are up on the server, you could have an automated process that would go through them and pull out values, maybe create a roll-up report and that sort of thing. The next feature in this area is something called the XML Flattener. Now, instead of just using our XML spreadsheet schema, you're able to take any XML schema and actually open it up inside of Excel. And we'll take any hierarchy that's there and flatten it out. And once it's in that flat table inside of Excel, you can do all the sorts of analysis that you'd expect to be able to do. So sorting, pivoting, filtering, and that sort of thing. Another feature in this area is something we call directed translation. So this is when you have an XML file that's not in the XML schema, XML spreadsheet that we understand natively, but you're able to take that XML schema and actually apply an XSL transform or style sheet to it and transform it into one of the other files that we know about. So you could transform it into the XML spreadsheet schema that we do understand, or you could imagine also transferring it to HTML or to any other text-based file format that Excel understands. And as I mentioned, you're also able to create web queries to XML data sources. So in the previous two versions, we've supported web queries to HTML pages. That was a new feature in '97, and we've improved it somewhat in 2000. Now you're able to actually create one of these web queries to it. So when Excel goes to an HTML page to create one of these web queries, if it has been specially marked up, Excel will actually get redirected to this XML data source. So the customer sees the richness and the nice display of HTML in the browser, and then Excel gets the XML representation of it for richness inside of Excel. So again, formulas, functions, and formatting, and that sort of thing. Things that were unavailable to you in HTML. We've also done quite a bit of work in the area of robustness, reliability, and stability. In particular, instead of letting the operating system handle crashes as it does today, when a crash actually occurs in one of the Office applications, we will catch that and then offer the user the chance to recover the files that are open today or actually report that crash to Microsoft. Now, when I say recover the files, what happens there is when one of these crashes occurs and the user indicates that they'd like to recover their files, you can actually Excel will go through each of the files that are open in memory and then go through and look for inconsistencies in each of these files, maybe that the crash might have caused. Now, assuming everything's fine with all the files, we'll go ahead and save those files out to the hard drive. We'll shut down Excel, we'll reload it again, reload all those files, and you'll hopefully be back up and working again with a minimum amount of interruption and work lost. Now, if you choose to report the crash to Microsoft, what happens is we actually connect over the internet to servers here at Microsoft, and it uploads all of the pertinent crash information from that crash. Now this allows us to do a number of things here. Number one, we on the product development teams get a better chance of understanding the ideas and the issues and the problems that customers are running into today. And that'll help us better prioritize fixes and features that we do in future versions. Maybe that's a service pack or a QFE or a hotfix or even a major version release. Now we also do a much better job of handling corrupt files. So in the past, you may have had a file that was damaged somehow through a network glitch or a bad sector on the hard drive or so on. And previous versions of Excel haven't done a very good job of being able to open those files up. Now we do a much better job at it. We actually have 3 different open modes, and we'll go through each one of those in turn, trying to pull out the most amount of information out of the customer file. Another feature in this area is something that we call auto recovery, and this is really just a timed backup of your file, and this is something that the other Office applications have had built in natively in them in the past few versions. And Excel's had an add-in, but the clear customer feedback we've gotten is that the add-in isn't sufficient for the sorts of things they need it to do. So the combination of the auto recovery and crash recovery allows you to actually have a choice between the different files that you can open up once a crash occurs. So a crash occurs, let's say that you go ahead and recover the files. When Excel comes back up, you're given the choice of going back to the original file that you opened, the file that was saved by auto recover, say 5 minutes before the crash, and you're also given the choice of the file that was actually saved out on the crash. And so you pick which file you want to start working from and go from there. Another new feature that we're introducing inside of Excel and also all of Office is something we're calling OnObject UI, or also Smart Tags is another name for it. Now, OnObject UI in Excel in particular allows much nicer formatting and makes it much easier to do the things you do today, only make them easier and faster. So for instance, if I were to insert a row inside of an existing table inside of Excel, today we take the formatting from either the above or below it and just apply it and don't give the user a choice. With Smart Tags, with this new OnObject UI, you actually get to choose the formatting you want. Either the same as the row above it, the same as the row below it, or you can actually clear the formatting. A specific kind of OnObject UI, this Smart Tag, is able to actually understand your data. So, for example, if I were to type in MSFT, which is Microsoft's stock ticker symbol, with the correct Smart Tag recognizer, we would be able to recognize that as a stock ticker symbol. In the box inside of Office 10, we're shipping a number of these recognizers, including the one I just described, the stock ticker symbol. The recognizer and then the action handler is a different piece. Once we've recognized one of these things, the user can then go and hover over the cell with the Smart Tag in it, and you'll get a list of options as you see here in the presentation. We have a RAID bug, and we have some different options that we have that we can choose. Now for the Smart Tag, that's the stock ticker symbol, you'll be able to go up to Money Central and look up this company's web page, or you'll be able to insert a web query to their stock price and so on. The Smart Tag infrastructure that I've described is completely open, and we're shipping an SDK about this. And in fact, we'll have a later webcast that describes this in much more detail. But for now, imagine that you can have customers who write their own recognizers and their own action handlers to recognize things and deal with things like customer IDs or ISBNs for books. We've also made some improvements based on customer feedback to our find and replace feature. So now we've done 2 big improvements in that area. Number one, you're finally able to actually find and replace across worksheets in a workbook, and that's something you couldn't do in the previous versions. In addition to that, you're actually now able to find and replace based on the cell formatting, and this is something along the lines of what Word does today. So you can imagine going in a workbook and finding all the cells that have the currency format and changing them to the comma format, let's say. Now, based on PSS issues, we know that link management is a significant problem for many of our customers. They have problems figuring out what links are in the first place. They don't know how to establish them. They don't know how to break them. They don't know how to create a link and say this cell in a particular workbook is equal to a cell in another file and so on. And once they have them there, they want to change them and edit them and that sort of thing. And we've never made it very easy to do. So in Excel 10, we've done two big improvements in this area. Number one is we've made the startup sequence much easier. So instead of getting the update links dialog that you used to get, we actually provide a much more textual description of what's going on. And if there are any missing files, any broken links, we have a much easier process of allowing you to go back there and change those links along the way. And once you've opened up a file with these links, we also have a new edit links dialog that allows you to find the problems quickly and either delete them or change them or add them and so on. We've also done improvements to web queries. So I mentioned web queries to XML earlier. We've also improved the interface. So we've had web queries for the last two versions, but we've never made it very easy for you to go and actually create a web query from scratch. Now we're making it much easier. In fact, you're able to bring up a dialog inside of Excel and go out to a web page. Once you're there, you're able to select any of the tables on that web page and then bring that information back into Excel and use that in your calculation model. And if you ever want to go back and make changes, you can go back to this same dialog and select a different table or a different website and bring in new information. We've also done some work to make it easier to enter formulas and functions. So we have done some work to make it more like a development environment in the sense that when you start typing a function, we'll actually display a tooltip, and the tooltip then will let you know what are the arguments and the order of the arguments. Now, the added advantage of these tooltips is you're actually able to click on one of the tooltips and then jump straight to the help topic, which will help you understand maybe what one of the functions does or what one of the arguments does. From studies that we've done on Excel user files, we know that there are a large percentage of them that actually only use the sum function, and that's the only function on anywhere in the workbook. And we assume that this is because we've made the sum function easy to use using the AutoSum toolbar button. Now what we're hoping to do with this new feature is bring those people who are only using sum to some other functions that are available to them. So you can see here that we've changed the AutoSum button to be a split button with an arrow drop down next to it. And you're able to actually select some of the other more common functions like average, count, min, and max. And if those won't do it for you, then we have the link at the bottom that allows you to jump to the more functions, which will take you directly to the insert function dialog, and it'll allow users to go through and insert other functions that aren't in this list. We've also done a number of features in the area that we call more correct spreadsheets. So the first feature here is error checking, and that's what you see here in the slide. Now, error checking is a way for Excel to go through all the formulas that you have in your worksheet and in the workbook and actually check them for various types of problems. We've identified around 7 to 8 different kinds of common problems. We'll actually go through and scan them. So we look for formulas that are different from the ones that are around them. We look for errors and that sort of thing. Once Excel finds one of these errors, it'll flag that cell, and you can go to it, click on the smart tag, and you'll get a list of options that might help you resolve the problem, or will actually provide some tools to help you figure out what the error is and how to fix it. Another thing we've done in this area is something called the watch window. And again, this is another development environment-like feature. And you're able to now put watches on various cells within your worksheet. So as the cells change, as the model recalculates, in the watch window you're able to see the results as they change. And you're also able to use that to jump immediately to different areas of the workbook. And then the third area that we've done, or the third feature we've done in this area, is we've improved rangefinder. And the rangefinder feature is coloring the references that you have in your formula. So in previous versions, we've had rangefinder available to you after you've typed in a formula and you're going back to edit it. Now we actually have rangefinder on the fly. So we'll go ahead and as you're typing, we'll actually color those cell references around the sheet. In the insert function dialog, we've also made it much easier to find functions that you're looking for. So in the past, you've been able to go over to the Office Assistant and type in some sort of a query of what sort of function you're looking for. And today we've actually integrated that Answer Wizard technology inside the insert function dialog. And so in this example, we're typing, how do I calculate the payment on a loan? And we're returning the PMT function. We've also made a fair amount of improvements in the area of worksheet protection. So in the previous versions, you're able to basically turn protection on and off, and that was about it. We've made it much more granular in 3 different ways. Number one, you're able to do that based on ranges. So you can set up ranges in your workbook and say that this range is protected and this one is not. In addition to that, for each of those ranges, you're actually able to go in and enable and disable different features based on that range. So you're able to say, perhaps that these set of users can go in and make changes to the cell, but they can't format, or you're able to do sorting and filtering and that sort of thing. And then the last area is actually based on user permissions. So using the Windows 2000 security model, you're able to allow certain people and groups access to different ranges in the worksheet and then not allow access to others. Now I'll describe some of the features improvements that we have in pivot tables. And in particular, we've done work to make creating pivot tables easier, and we've also done some work to add some features to OLAP pivot tables, which were a new pivot table type in Excel 2000. So the first thing we do today in Excel 10 is when you're creating a pivot table, we provide immediate feedback. So when you drag a field from the field list onto the pivot table, we'll actually show the values. So in this case, we have drink, food, and non-consumable. And we're hoping that that'll help users actually go and create these pivot tables easier. We also have a new way to generate the get pivot data function. So if you've used this in the past, you know it's very difficult to set up. If you haven't used this in the past, this is a function that you can use to extract a certain intersection within your pivot table. So you can imagine sum of revenue for a particular quarter or a particular region, and you want one cell in your model to always point to that area in the pivot table. In the past, like I mentioned, it's very difficult to create these. Now in Excel 10, you're able to simply type equals in some other cell and click on the cell you're looking at in the pivot table, and we will actually build that get pivot data formula for you. Now, based on customer feedback or customers who use our OLAP pivot tables, we know that it was very important to be able to multi-select within the page field, and that is a new feature that we've added this time around for OLAP pivot tables. We also now allow you to adjust the totals based on user applied filtering. So in Excel 2000, we were relying on the OLAP cube to actually report back the totals to us, and that was independent of the filters that were being applied. Now that once you filter it in Excel 10, we will actually adjust those totals to reflect the fact that you've made filters and that the totals may be different than the sum of the whole. We also have made drawing borders easier in your worksheet. So users have long told us that they'd like to have a feature that's similar to Word's border drawing tool in their tables feature. And we've actually borrowed a feature from Macintosh Office 2001 that allows you to take that border drawing pencil and select a line style and weight and actually go and apply that to cells visually instead of going to a dialog which obscures the table that you're working on. We also have done a few small improvements to printing, and one of those is what we call the Save the Trees feature. So this is a case where a lot of times in Excel we would print off extra blank pages at the end of a document, and we will no longer do that. We detect when we're going to spit out one of these blank pages, and we go ahead and not send that to the printer. We've also made it a little bit easier to interact between Excel and Access. The very clear customer feedback we've gotten is that it's difficult to bring data back and forth between those two applications. Now, as a start, we've allowed you to open Access databases inside of Excel. So when you point at one of these databases in our File Open dialog, we'll actually let you select which table from the database you want to bring in, and we'll bring that inside a worksheet in Excel. And then once it's in there, you can do all the rich analysis and formatting and things that you have come to know inside of Excel. So charting, sorting, pivoting, and filtering. We also have a new text-to-speech feature. So we imagine customers will use this when they have a sheet of paper that they're retyping into Excel, And once they're done doing that, they can actually use the text-to-speech feature to read it back to you, so that as it's reading the values off, you can go down your sheet and actually check the values for accuracy to make sure you type them in correctly. We did a lot of work in Excel 2000 to enable HTML files. So the HTML file format, saving out entire workbooks as HTML or saving subsets of your workbook out into an existing HTML page to actually publish that into a page. Now in Excel 10, we actually have an auto republish feature in that case. So once you've published a range of cells into an HTML page, we now allow you to, every time you make changes to the master Excel document and save it, at the same time we save it to the Excel file, we'll go ahead and automatically republish that back to the HTML page. We're hoping this is a feature that'll make many of our users happy. As a side project, we've made a very big effort to go back and look at all of the alerts in the product and figure out which ones are the ones that are confusing and annoying and maybe just downright wrong. We've gone back, we've gotten rid of many of these, we've reworded the other ones, and hopefully people will get fewer of these alerts, and when they do, they'll make more sense. Now we know that email collaboration is one of the activities that customers in Office use all the time, and we've made it much easier this time using Excel and email. So now you're able to take a range of cells or a chart or pivot table and actually send those to someone using email. Related to our new web query improvements, we also have a way now for you to actually start inside of Internet Explorer. So if you're on a web page and you'd like to create an Excel web query to it, you can actually right-click on that page and choose the Export to Excel menu item. Once that happens, Excel will start up, and you'll be able to choose that table that you just saw inside of Internet Explorer, and we'll go ahead and create that web query to that table, to that page. So starting from Internet Explorer, not starting from Excel. And finally, last but not least, since the beginning of having multiple sheets inside of a workbook, which is several versions ago, customers have asked us for a way to go through and categorize their worksheets based on color. So now we're finally giving them that. We now have the ability to actually add sheet tab colors to all the sheets in your workbook. And that's it for my presentation today. Any questions?
Not right now.
Okay, thank you.